Hi, my name is Uwe. I'm going to be talking about this Speed Graphic camera. It's a Speed Graphic and it has a focal plane shutter that doesn't quite work right because it has not enough spring tension, and I'm going to show you how to adjust the spring tension and then measure the actual shutter speed that we get from the focal plane shutter. So currently when I turn this lever here for winding up the shutter, you can see how it moves in the back there. This is the wide open, and then you can see how it has different width slots that are opening up as I'm winding up the focal plane shutter here. The really small one is supposed to give us 1/1000th of a second of exposure. But when I press the release button, you can see it moving, maybe not in the thousandths. In the slower one, you can sort of see the bright area flash by. But at the very end, from open, it's supposed to be advancing. If I press it again, it's supposed to be advancing to close the shutter, and I have to kind of help it to just even move to the last position. So this does not have enough spring tension to wind the shutter strong enough to move through all the different speeds reliably. So to see this from the back, I've loosened these two screws. So let me just remove the two screws here to remove the ground glass. So now we can see a little better from the back end how this works when I wind the shutter. The shutter itself, the cloth is actually in good shape here. I don't see any holes or tears in it. So you can see it a little bit better what's going on here. So to adjust the spring tension, it works a little bit like one of those roller shutters that you use for your window. It has an internal torsion spring that you have to pre-tension for it to work well, just like a normal window shutter. In order to make the adjustment, I have to remove this plate here. There are 4 metal screws, and one of them, as I was loosening it, the head just twisted off, sheared off. So there's 4 metal screws and 2 longer wood screws up here. So I already loosened them, so you have to spend less time watching me turn screws. So I'm just removing those. To remove the cover plate of the mechanism that controls the focal plane shutter. So now the plate is loose. To actually remove it, I don't think this twister is quite in the right position. You have to kind of, it has to align, the twist part has to align with the holes in the plate itself, and currently I'm not able to get it in the right position unless I manually so you can see that I kind of had to twist this knob here so that it allows me to squeeze the wide blade through these 2 slots that are in here. Hopefully you can see that. So now we have the mechanism exposed here, and where we're going to be working at is down here. Actually, there's 1 screw which is sort of a lock screw that holds the actual tension spring in place. So there's 2 slots for our screwdrivers to fit into. This simply holds it in place. You can sort of see, let me try and zoom in here. If I can, maybe I can't. Alright, so let me zoom in a little bit more and refocus. Alright, so this is what I'm talking about here. There's one screw that holds this part here in place, and there's like 4 detents, so you can adjust the position of the upper one by quarter turns and then hold it in place with the lower one. So if I loosen this all the way, this may move, releasing the tension of the sort of the pre-tension of the internal. Okay, so now you heard it and how it now has totally released the pre-tension of the internal spring here. I can put my screwdriver into the slot here and I can pre-tension and it should be going this way for tensioning. So as I'm turning this, I can now feel the tension increasing. And we're just going to try to get it into a reasonable spot here. So by turning the lower one, I can lock this into place. So let me just see whether it will now I was supposed to actually have it at the other position here, so that was so I unwound the thing entirely, and now I actually have to, in the open position, I have to give it enough spring tension to actually want to. And you can see as I'm increasing the spring tension, it's starting to pull the focal plane shutter down, and I have to give it enough tension here after I release it that it actually pulls this shut. So let's try this one more time. And it's just initially just sort of a trial and error bit here. We're going to be measuring the actual speeds in a moment here. So now when I wind up to the wide open position and press the release, it actually does pull it shut. I think it should be pulling it shut a little bit more firmly, so I'm going to increase the tension a little bit more here. So I'm putting my screwdriver in to not lose the existing tension. You can either use a second screwdriver or just your thumb to release here, and I'm going to give it another couple of turns. And see how this setting here works. So again, it's sort of locked into place now. I'm winding it open, and this is starting to look better. So let me go all the way up to the fastest speed, and now when I press the shutter button, a very solid snap and lock. Wide open and then closed. So at this point we have the basic setting improved, that it actually goes through the entire sequence that it's supposed to go to, and it closes the curtain at the very end as well. When we started, it didn't do this at all. And we did this by increasing the pre-tension of the internal torsion spring for the focal plane shutter. So now we're in a better place here, but we don't know what the actual exposure times are. So at the fastest one, when it moves this very thin slot across the focal plane, it's supposed to give us a 1/1000th of a second exposure. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more again. So just to show you one more time here, I have it all the way wound up, and if I click this, you probably cannot even see it. But this is supposed to give us a 1/1000th of a second exposure. In order to actually measure this properly, I have a little focal plane or just shutter speed tester. So this has a tiny little light sensor that I'm going to place behind the focal plane shutter here, and then I'm going to use this flashlight that came with the device to shine a bright light against the curtain. And you can probably see this now. So here on the other side now, when I press the shutter or release it all the way, you can probably see that it now shines a bright light through. And when this light here lights up, that means the tester sees the light. And if I close it, now you can see it was open for 9 seconds. And as I'm winding it, the numbers don't make much sense. But now, if I press the shutter release, I see that it measures just about 1/500th of a second. It's supposed to be 1/1000th. Now, with these old cameras, I'm not sure that is still achievable with the old springs. I don't want to over tighten the torsion spring because I'm afraid it might break at some point. I'm actually personally okay with having reliably 1/500th of a second shutter speed. And if I keep winding it back to the setting and pressing the button, you can see it's quite close, or just under 1/500th of a second. So if I wanted to increase this or the tension a little bit to get this closer to 500, I would go all the way to the very bottom again and then try to increase the tension. And I'm going to move forward a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here, hopefully. So I'm holding the current tension. I'm loosening my screw that holds the torsion spring in place. And I'm giving it maybe one full turn and see how this affects the shutter speed at 1/1000th. It should be a little bit faster, or give me a shorter speed now. So let me wind it up again. And let's try this again. So right now a full turn moved the speed up, or shortened the speed to 1/518th of a second. So I kind of overshot my goal a little bit, and I gave it a full turn. So maybe if I only give it a half a turn, I will be very close to 1/500th of a second. So let me try that. I'm going to hold it in place, loosen my set screw, and now I'm going to release just 1/2 of a turn and lock it in place again. Let's measure this one more time. And now, so now when I measure this speed, you can see it's 1/502 parts of a second. So this is probably as close as we can get it for this particular part. Now, like I said earlier, I could try to make this a true 1/1000th of a second, but I'm actually fine just having a very accurate 1/500th of a second at this set speed. And then I will just make a note that when I set it to 1000, it actually gives me 1/500th. Down here there's also a alternate scale that brings in a little speed reducer. Let's see what it does that. So for that I'm supposed to be getting 1/500th, and let's measure this here. And you can hear it's a little bit noisier, and it actually gives me almost very precisely half of what it indicates here, 1/255th of a second, which is nice actually. This is nice and precise. So for this particular camera, I think I'm going to leave it at this setting here to have all the speeds work reliably. This was supposed to be 160th, and it gives me 1/80th of a second. The next one's supposed to be 1/30th of a second. Now we're getting closer to the 1/24th. So I think I'm going to just make a little chart to give me a table that says if the setting is 1/30th, I'm actually getting a 24th of a second, and so forth. So for each speed, the setting speed and then the actual measured speed, and with that I should be able to dial in very precise exposures as far as the exposure times go with this camera here. So hopefully this helps. So this is how you can take an old camera from the 50s with a somewhat tired torsion spring and just kind of pre-tension it a little bit more so that you can get shutter speeds that, if not precisely what it indicates, precisely something else. In this case, it gives me very precisely half of the indicated shutter speed, which I'm very happy with. So this gives me something to work with. Like I said, you could try and increase the tension to the point where you get closer to an actual 1/1000th of a second, but then you're running the risk of potentially breaking the spring that's inside that roller. And when you break that, well, then you're just done. Then you have to find replacement parts. So I'm going to leave it at this because I don't want to break the camera. And I have now reliably measured speeds that I can work with on this camera here. So anyways, hopefully this helps somebody out there to adjust the tension or the focal plane shutter on one of these old Speed Graphic cameras. Thanks. Take care.